Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us James Kroshus with Treasure Valley Retirement Shield, and we'll be talking about achieving financial peace of mind. James, welcome to the program.
Glad to be here.
Hey, I'm excited to talk with you because I always love certain topics that just make you feel comfortable. And anytime you talk about peace of mind in life, whether it's personal, professional, it just really is a powerful topic. So I'm excited to see how you guide your clients in that. But before we dive in, give us a little bit of your story and background and how did you get into the financial services industry?
Well, I'm 71 years old and I've been into this business over 40 years. And so I didn't plan on getting into this business, but my mom cursed me when I was little. I don't know exactly when the curse started, but it seemed like it was always there. She said, "Jimmy, it's that mouth that's going to get you in trouble." Well, I thought, trying to think positive, if that's the case, maybe I had to use it to try to make a living. And it's worked out pretty good.
Neat. Yeah, that's I've heard people say, your mouth could make you millions, and people that have a way with words, so to speak. I think the antithesis of it's going to get you in trouble. The antithesis of that is it could really do a great job for you in how you serve your client. So, boy, you've been in the business for a minute or two, and you've seen the ups and downs and all around. And today we're talking about financial peace of mind. And it seems like every time we turn on the computer, TV, radio, we hear about craziness in politics or environmental or economic shifts or inflation or deflation or whatever the case is. Talk about why this is such a powerful topic, why you chose such a unique and timely name for your company with Treasure Valley Retirement Shield, and get us started talking down the path of talking about financial peace of mind.
Well, we're in a battle against a big enemy that's bigger than us, a battle against the stealth tax, the unrestricted control of printing of government money. Then there's taxflation. Both of these robs Americans of their hard-earned purchasing power and have the ability of turning their own Treasure Valley into a field of weeds. And so my motivation as I grew older, as my clients grew older, I saw some things that were going wrong in their own personal lives just because they didn't have, the proper advice.
It's really interesting, the field of weeds. And I love that wordplay because people think of field of dreams. And boy, the antithesis of that is it's not a field of dreams. It's a field of weeds. And I think when people can get that thought in their mind of, where could some of those landmines be or problem areas, and then be able to address them well ahead of the potential devastation or negative impact, whatever that might be. Boy, when you're prepared, you can make some wise choices given the time ahead, but you don't want to make those decisions in the midst of it because you tend to react versus to making wise choices. So talk a little bit about lessening or mitigating some of those destructive effects from things that we can't control, like inflation or taxation, because we read about those things in the news. We know what they mean, like, oh, your dollar won't stretch as far as it used to, but we can't control that.
Well, that question kind of brings us to the next question facing the security of our financial futures. Trying to stay ahead of our politicians making ridiculous laws sometimes cause desperate investors to make desperate decisions, kind of compounding the risk. Mm-hmm. So the question you ask is, can an investor participate in market gains with downside protection?
Yeah.
Well, that answer is, of course, yes. Didn't Warren Buffett give us the two rules for investing? Rule number one, never lose money. Rule number two, remember rule number one.
Yep.
So the retirement shield that I present offers it kills several birds with the same stone. So imagine a market gains when the market rises, then downside protection when the cycle is in reverse. Now that's where a retirement shield is such a vital tool. Downside protection against loss, higher gains than any bank can offer. This strategy I've seen work for hundreds of my clients. It's actually at the heart of the retirement shield. Market gains without risk, mitigating losses due to taxation and inflation. Now that's a winning strategy. That is a strategy that brings peace of mind, and I sell peace of mind.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times we all tend to be creatures of habit and go along with the herd mentality. And you get your first job and sign a bunch of papers with HR and you set up this 401k thing and you just sign away and you just don't think about things. But in reality, many of the retirement kind of strategies are the old school, just put your money in the market, and it was in the 401k. And now looking at retirement. So I guess we'll just kind of leave it where it is or things like that. But with like what you're talking about with market gains, that sounds good to hear the word market gain, but there's a huge swing when you deal with that volatility. It's great when things are going good, but boy, when volatility rears its ugly head and then you've got those losses, you take these big, huge percentage points, 20, 30% loss on your portfolio. It takes forever to recoup, and you might not have forever if you're closer to retirement age. How do you work with your clients and advise them regarding the volatility aspect and when to start thinking about moving out of kind of those more volatile sectors and sections of their retirement income?
Well, I've been, like I said, in this business going on 5 decades. And one of the things that is important to me is my sleep, because I think I'm probably the world's number one insomniac. But one thing I don't want waking me up is worrying about my clients' money. And so when I started my career, I saw a lot of things happen. I saw a lot of people lose a lot of money. And I thought, I could never look a client in the eye if I lost their money. And so I decided to stay on the side of safety. And I found over the years that my decision to remain on the side of safety, my clients are doing just as well, and many of them a lot better than those who decided to live on the edge and take every risk that comes along. Because see, every client that has money in Wall Street has heard this saying: it's not a loss unless you sell, right?
Yeah, it's a paper loss.
But they never hear this. It's not a gain unless you sell.
Right.
It's the buy and hold philosophy. And I tell you, I think the tortoise knows something that the hare doesn't know. It's just being consistent and not, most people, when they get into the retirement age, they don't need to hit a grand slam. They don't need to even hit a home run. It's kind of like, if you want to use a golfing terminology, people are on the 18th green and they still have a driver in their hand. When you're approaching retirement, there's only your club selection shrinks. And when you're actually on the retirement green, you don't need to hit a home run. You don't need to hit a 300-yard drive. You get a putter in your hand, because all you really want to do is get to first base, and then second base, and then third base, and you'll eventually get home. But if you're swinging for the fence, that's where people get in trouble.
Yeah. I love that I think our wives kind of roll their eyes when they hear us guys do analogies, but guys relate to analogies, but the tortoise and the hare and the grand slam. I think that too many times we all get enamored with those big numbers and returns and, oh, look, I heard Bitcoin or this or that or the other and whatever stock. But in reality, I know that I have heard some people say in the past, I can show you quantifiable data, research and numbers that someone that was in the ups and downs of the market compared to someone that had a nice safe protected account that didn't take any losses at all, guaranteed. The person that was the tortoise, the guaranteed account, they made off better in 5-10 years because all those ups and downs chip away and chip away. And I think that, to your point, the paper loss, people go, oh, I'm up 30%. But then when they go down 30%, they go, oh, it's just on paper. But yeah, to your point, you're only up on paper as well. And this is an interesting mathematical equation, which we don't need to get into the weeds of, but I know you'll relate to this. If you had a $1 million in your portfolio and you had a 20% hit, now you're down 200,000 or you have 800,000 left in the portfolio. Well, you need way more than a 20% gain to get back to ground zero because all of a sudden now you need 30, 35, 38, whatever the number is. And people don't think that way. They think, oh, I've got time to recoup. How do you advise your clients to start making the move out of some of the more volatile money in the market per se into some of these safe accounts? At what age should they be starting to think of those moves?
Well, it's different for everybody, but just let me tell you one more serious, uh, roadblock to our peace of mind. About 20 years ago, maybe it's longer than that, I had a client come in and he had retired, and his company stock, which was all his 401k, went from 750 to about 580. And he said, Jim, I like what I'm hearing about safety and stuff. But when my stock comes back, I'm going to I'm going to come and talk to you. I said, well, what if it doesn't come back? Oh, don't worry. I've put 30 years into this company. I know this stock is coming back.
Hmm.
I said, do you mind if I call you every couple of months? He said, no, go ahead. Every time I called him, he was down another 25,000.
Wow.
And then 9/11 hit. It was all airline stock.
Oh,
So
no.
his 750 went to just over 200,000. I never heard from him after that because he had to go back into high risk. So I don't know what happened to him. You see
Mm.
how desperate we become?
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah.
there's a really a cardinal rule is, man, you cannot be romantic with your company stock
Yeah.
because you never know if that stock or that company is going to divorce you someday. So that's just one of the pitfalls that we talk about.
Yeah. I've even heard it said too that and I know that's a kind of a funny way to people talk about it, but you said about being romantic with your company stock. I've heard it said that the market doesn't care about your goals. Your goal might be to retire great and have plenty of money. The market doesn't care about that. The market's going to do what the market does. And there's sometimes no rhyme or reason. The dictator in Zimbabwe might scratch his nose the wrong way one day and it causes every market to go crazy. We just don't know what is going to happen. So I think those are some of the points that, you start saying, hey, in your 20s and 30s, okay, you can recover and, take it on the chin and have some time to rebuild back up. But once you get in your 40s, 50s, and certainly in your 60s, you better start circling the wagons and getting some of those safer, guaranteed protected accounts. What are some of the recommendations that you're making to your clients to start making those moves? What does that look
Well,
like for them?
it's interesting that in the beginning, if Wall Street didn't sell it, it was a dog. But
Yeah.
now Wall Street is looking towards more safer investments. Matter of fact, I got a Wall Street Journal article that talked about the indexed annuity. Well,
Hmm.
I had a client recently who got a 30% over a 30% return on an indexed annuity contract that has no risk.
Mm.
Can you imagine if the market tanks, you sit the year out? Why
Yeah.
would someone want to go into the market when they're approaching retirement with no downside protection? If the
Yeah.
market goes up, you go up with it. if the market goes down, the worst thing that's going to happen that year is you don't have a gain. I had a client call me one time when the market tanked in one of those big events that nobody can control or
Yeah.
foresee. And he said, Jim, what's my account doing? I said, guess what? You didn't make anything. Isn't that
Yep.
great? He
Right.
goes,
Right.
I didn't make anything. He said, well, your neighbor lost 25%.
Yeah.
And then you just have to remind him, look, when the market tanks, we sit the year out
Yeah.
and then we
But we
go
but
up.
we have all of our money sitting tight and protected. Your neighbors are running for the hills. And then next year when things kind of level back out, then we start creeping back up. That's the tortoise and the hare. And that tortoise is making progress. And he sits out, a leg of the race, but then when he gets his energy back, he starts plodding right back along.
That is a retirement shield.
Mm.
Every professional sports team who has a great offense also has to have a great defense. Because
Yeah.
you can score 150 points a game, but if you don't have a good defense and the opposing team scores 151, you're never
Yep.
going to win.
Yep.
That's why you have to have a sword in one hand and a shield in the other. We
I love it.
focus on this, and some of these products give us both.
And I think that when people hear their neighbors say, "Oh, my guy got me this," and I, like what you said, like a 30% this and no downside, and whatever the specifics are, the temptation is, "Oh, tell me." Or, "Oh, I'm going to go online and find that thing you mentioned, or you mentioned a fix, whatever. I'm going to go get that." The problem with us doing that as humans is we feel like quick fix. But the problem is these types of products, they've been around hundreds of years, but they still need to be set up and structured the right way with the right floors and ceilings or caps or whatever the case is. So talk a little bit about the need for working with someone that is independent, that has every option available, not captured in only, having 4 or 5 or 6 types of products to offer, but working with someone that has your best interest in heart, that can look at your end result, make some recommendations, and really explain things well to make sure things are set up the right way.
Well, yeah, again, it's very subjective,
Yeah.
but you do want to have you do want to have available more irons in the fire.
Hmm.
And if you are with a company that keeps you captive, you have to sell what they offer.
Yeah.
Being independent all of my life has opened up the field of options for my clients. There's just a whole lot more irons in the fire when you can look around to a dozen or more different companies and make sure you find the best solution. And you can't get that when you work for one company. It's like if you have a tire store and they sell one brand, you don't know if you're getting the right
Hmm.
fit for you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's kind of like if you have a hammer on, and that's the only tool you have, everything looks like a nail. So if you're trying to fit that square peg in a round hole and all you have are these certain products, that's all you can offer. Well, as a consumer, as a client, you might be limited. And so I think that's a really huge piece. So, I think this conversation has been so helpful to realize, protect yourself, have that sword and shield, have the right people on your side watching out for you, checking up on things. And I think that this would be so powerful for someone just to have like a second opinion. Hey, can you take a look at how my retirement is set up? So if someone is interested in connecting with you and maybe having that conversation, what's the best way they can reach out and connect?
Well, they can reach out through me through email at tvrshield@gmail.com. The acronym is for Treasure Valley Retirement Shield, but it's tvrshield@gmail.com, or they can call me direct at 775-233-2203.
Excellent. Well, Jim, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.